I was just having a casual conversation with somebody on the internet, and I mentioned in passing my negative experience with communism at Laos. He wanted me to tell the story as briefly as possible. I talked about my experience with communism, actually existing communism in the real world in Laos. And then he went on to say that it seemed to him obvious now why it is I have such a negative view of communism, of the history of communism, given that some people threatened to kill me in Laos. Hey, a lot of people were nice to me too. We didn't mention that. Some of my best friends were communists when I lived in Laos. When you live in a communist country, almost everyone you know is a member of the Communist Party. So yeah, people in both China and Laos, plenty of them were nice to me, and I kind of argued back, no, my background in communism, both in terms of research and its involvement in my personal life, goes back much, much earlier. So his next question was, you want to just restate it here? It's a good question, but I was reluctant to answer it. Here we go.
I was just asking you to bullet point like what your problems are with communism.
Right. So I remember being asked by a German girl, and her family was from East Germany. So her family had the memory of communism. She was too young, but her parents and grandparents all had been part of communism in East Germany. And she asked me, we already had conversations, so she knew my kind of level of historical awareness of communism, level of research I've done. And she said, do you really think that, communism as a philosophy is violent and destructive, or is it just kind of happenstance, circumstances that accrued afterwards? And what I said to her, because she kind of grew up in a communist era, she knew what I was talking about. I said, honestly, if you just go back and reread Karl Marx, yes, it really is hard-coded into the DNA of communism in terms of the philosophy, in terms of the program they're following already from Karl Marx. The belief that progress in history can only be accomplished through violence, through exacerbating social contradictions, through class war. Those are doctrines I very fundamentally disagree with. I also...
Go further, I'd like you to...
Sure. Okay, so could you narrow down your question as I'm trying to narrow down my answer?
Just the three things that you really mentioned is contradictions, violence, and whatever the third one was.
Right. So Karl Marx's philosophy, this is, I guess the disclaimer is, this is not the whole of Karl Marx's philosophy, but it's one of the most important, most influential parts, is the idea that history progresses through opposites negating one another. This is often said to be a legacy of the philosophy of Hegel. A lot of abstract things are said about it. This is often described as dialectical materialism, or the dialectical materialist approach to history. But he put forward both a general view and a specific view of the period of history he was living in. For example, progress would not be made, Karl Marx taught, through aristocrats and wealthy people becoming more humane towards poor people. So in his period of time, when he was alive, it's true, many factory owners were very cruel towards their employees. But his reaction to that is not that they should become more humane and kind to their employees. His reaction to that is not that you should have incremental legislation that guarantees, the health and safety of workers. His view is that you should not have exactly the kind of incremental progress we really had in the Western capitalist world. He rejects all of that and says, no, the only way to make progress is through exacerbating the social contradiction, through making it worse and worse. And he has his argument for why he believes that's inevitable, so that the class consciousness of the working class increases, and so that the working class then rises up to basically kill the ruling class. You can kind of insert a footnote there, like, well, it doesn't really mean they have to kill all of them, but there are definitely massacres involved. And just point out, when communists want to dodge this and say, oh, no, class war is meant in some more abstract way, that's very interesting. That's very much parallel to the way some Muslims will try to claim that jihad is meant to be a non-literal jihad. Like it's a figurative, it's a poetic jihad. No.
That's fine. That's
yeah.
Fine. So why do you think the class war is occurring?
Sorry, but my point was just that is part of the philosophy, is advancing the idea that progress has to be accomplished through those opposites negating each other through class war, etc. Yeah, as stated.
Progress is only realized through violence, right? It's that maybe to reach a sort of communist ideal violence has to occur.
No. That's not Karl Marx's philosophy. Karl Marx's philosophy is that social progress only comes about through violence. That the way to
But progress to what though?
No, right. But Karl, I'm just being clear. Karl Marx does not regard violence as a necessary evil to be minimized, and you can see that as in his commentary on the French Revolution. He and Engels obsessed over the details of the French Revolution. But no, Karl Marx, Marxism as a philosophy is pro-violence. It views violence as necessary for the transformation of society, and this is linked to class war, materialist dialectics, and his economic theory also. These are linked together. That was one of the things that made his philosophy distinctive. A lot of people wanted to help the poor in Europe, during his century, but that was his method of helping the poor. Was class war, was violence, was putting that at the center. So that's different from other philosophy at the time. Plenty of people had other ideas about helping the poor, including obviously anarchists and socialists and what have you.
Yeah, but why do you think this violence was embraced? What do you think is the goal? Why do you think it's occurring? It's to create what?
Oh, so what you mean ostensibly or kind of actually? I mean ostensibly, what Karl Marx is promising you is that society is going to progress through a paradigm shift that's comparable to the abolition of slavery. So in the same way in the past, society changed fundamentally when it emerged from a period of slavery to a period of wage labor. In the same way that society transformed when it emerged from abolitionism, there was going to be another big fundamental change economically and socially in the structure of society. But that this would be accomplished through this violence. He basically had a set of predictions about what was going to happen in the future. And then communists and Marxists piously very much believed in those predictions.
Yeah, so basically his message. So real quick before so we have the correct and we share the same definitions. What do you think his end goal is idealistically?
Well, he's promising you very vaguely some kind of utopia that comes after this. But of course, there's no reason for us to believe that. But that's what he's promising. He's promising that the workers. Okay, I can be more specific. He's promising that the workers will take over the means of production, and that will be the end of mankind oppressing man's oppression of man. That's what was promised.
I mean, vaguely put, sure, that might be okay to characterize it that way.
Sure. And that's the nature of political propaganda. Promises about the utopia to come tend to be a bit vague. They're even contradictory. You can contrast what he says about it in one place to another. And of course, it's a poetic idea that society would be better. I don't begrudge him that. Most politicians, even today, they're not real specific about what outcomes are going to come if you follow their advice.
Yeah, but just do you disagree with the basic tenets?
Yes.
Redistribute wealth.
Okay, so this is again a misconception about communism. If you're talking about redistributing wealth, that's capitalism, both from Marxist perspective and from the perspective of actually existing communist societies like China, Cambodia, Russia. No, please let me finish the sentence. That's a really important. But that's a really important distinction. What communists believe in is centralizing wealth, is centralizing ownership, not redistributing it. So when communism failed in Cambodia, which incidentally happened during a period when they were ruled by Vietnam, so communist Cambodia got conquered by a different communist country, by Vietnam, and then Vietnam acknowledged that the communist economic system was a failure. And in giving up on it, they redistributed land ownership. They gave land to the poor. But before that, during the period when they believed in communism, they were taking land away from the poor. They were also taking land away from the rich to centralize the ownership. So that's what communists believe in. So if you ask me, do you believe in redistributing land? You're actually asking me, do you believe in capitalism, especially from a communist perspective?
Are you a communist, though?
I assume you're asking the guy who's questioning me.
You're asking me?
Yeah, cool. Yeah.
I don't think I would qualify myself as a communist.
What would you qualify as?
As a democratic socialist.
Yeah.
Okay, I see.
Well, obviously, especially in the recent history of Europe, democratic socialism is one of the most successful ways to organize a society in the history of the world. I mean, it's in the top 5 or something, and of course, yeah. But I just say, I mean, democratic socialism is a system that has been proven to work in many different historical and cultural contexts. I don't feel that's true of communism.
Period, right? You can't just jump from point A to point B when there's a whole lot between point A and point B. So it's just like a transition, right?
It's the journey, not the arrival,
Well, but there's another possibility there. You can tell me if this is optimistic or pessimistic. When you look at the reality of what Switzerland is today, when you look at the reality of what Japan is today, so these places are not paradise. What if that is the destination? What if that is the end? What if there is no utopia beyond that? What if the best you can really do is attaining the same level of organization and care for the poor that you see in real world societies like Japan and Switzerland today?
I guess that's just